welcome to a monthly wrap-up. Today I want to talk about all the books I read in February, but first I want to have a disclaimer because this was a very different reading month for me than normal. One thing I did completely different that I have talked about time and time again, how much I hate ebooks. And this month I think I read at least 5 ebooks. The reason behind this is at the beginning of the month we got our 2-year-old foster son's 6-month-old sister added to the house, and so when I'm up at night feeding her, or just during the day feeding her, I can hold my phone, and in the night there's some light there, so I've been reading some books that way. Yeah, so that is like why some things are different this month. Oh, and I've got like a wide range here. There were quite a few books I did not like this month, and some that were like pretty good, and then I had some like really great ones. So what I decided to do this month is to go back to doing this in star rating order. Even though I feel like the ratings are kind of like, sometimes they could have some wiggle room, like a 3 could maybe be a 3.5, but it could also kind of be a 2.5 depending on the day. I picked numbers where I kind of think they belong. So let's just start with the DNFs. First of all, a couple weeks ago I shared my Read or Read project where I think there were 17 books on the list that I want to read this year, and if I don't, they're going. So I'm giving myself approximately 50 pages of the book to see if it's worth reading, and I did a reading vlog specific for my Patreons, sharing, like, they helped me pick out 3 books off my list. They didn't know what they were doing, they just were giving answers to questions I was putting out there, and these are the 3 books that they unknowingly picked. The Way of Shadows. This is a fantasy story that I actually quit before 50 pages because I was really not enjoying it. That was one book off my list. Then I had Charlotte and Emily. This is like kind of like a novel slash historical fiction, but like story about the Brontes, but it was really dry, and it followed what is known of the Brontes really closely, which is good, but it also makes for a really dry story, so I quit this one after 50 pages. And then the third one was Out of Africa. Actually, there was quite a few comments on my Read or Read video about this book. A lot of people recommended the movie. The book was so boring. I got 50 pages in. First of all, I couldn't even tell, based on those 50 pages, that this was a female narrator. Like, she never even talked about herself in any way that I had any idea who this person was that was even telling this story. And then there was like a whole chapter about how she helped this person on her land, and it wasn't until the end of the chapter I was like, oh, this is like a, I don't know, under 10-year-old boy. Like, the way she had talked about him, I thought this was at least like a 20-year-old. So like at the same time there was tons of description about the area and how it looked, and but all that description, and I still just couldn't understand what was going on. So I'm quitting that one. But maybe I'll watch the movie because so many people recommended it. But also, I never watch movies, so that probably will actually never happen. So that's 3 books crossed off that list already. Then I had another DNF, and that is This Savage Song. This is my 3rd Victoria Schwab book. The second one that no, actually, that's not true. This is the first one I've DNF'd. But this one and A Darker Shade of Magic, I personally have just found her characters to be so boring that I didn't really care to read. There was nothing that actually made me quit this book. I got about a third of the way through, other than just like boredom. I didn't care about the people or like the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on a separate pile. Like, I have a specific DNF pile for books that I'm willing to try again if people convince me to. So when I have a few books on this pile, then I'll give you guys some options and you can pick which one I need to actually read all the way through. But yeah, otherwise I can't motivate myself to finish this. Now we're on to 2-star books, and the first one I have to share is called The Twin. This is like a YA suspense thriller, I guess. I think I had to bring it back to the library already, so I don't have my copy anymore. But it is about a girl whose twin sister comes to live with her because when their parents split, they each went with one parent, and she feels like some things are going on with this sister of hers. But the whole book, it kind of just felt like something was coming, but it was like, I feel like it was a thriller, so it should have been coming faster. Like, I just kept thinking like, well, eventually the story's gonna start, and I was over 100 pages in already. And then eventually it did start, and I really despised the way it ended. So yeah, 2 stars. My next 2-star I actually just read. This is Briar Rose. This is kind of like a World War II historical fiction story. Our main character is one of 3 sisters, and their grandma tells the story about Briar Rose and implies that she is Briar Rose. And then the grandmother dies, and like this is a story she's told through their entire childhood. The grandmother dies and makes the youngest girl promise to figure out her story. And so through the whole book, we're kind of like trying to uncover the grandma's story. And I realized I really like this idea. I'm not the hugest fan of historical fiction, I know that. But I kind of like it when someone's digging into the history and we're not necessarily back in history following characters. I learned that from this book, but I hate the way this book was executed. I dislike the characters so much. Like I was honestly writing notes. These sisters, I think they're like at least in their 20s, like mid-20s, possibly a little older. And they acted like they were 7-year-olds. Like they were just like bickering all the time. And I'm like, just like grow up. And our main character wasn't as annoying, but she also like had nothing to her. And yeah, so I really didn't like the way it was executed, but I really liked the idea. And I love this cover. I am doing a reading vlog because I was reading this for the Hey Readerathon, so I'm gonna kind of like talk a little bit more about my thoughts in that. That will be coming out after this video, so I think on Monday. Then I have 2 3-star books. Which one to start with? Let's do this one. So I finally finished The Lost World. I've been using the app Serial Reader to get me through some classics. They give you short little bits of each book to read every day, and this is the one I focused on for February. So this is it really was just like a classic sci-fi story. In this one, our main character goes to, I think it's like South America, and he's going to help some guy find dinosaurs, which this guy had seen before, but he didn't have any proof. No one believed him. And there's like ape men and dinosaurs, and it's just like, wow, this is a classic sci-fi story. I liked it more than Journey to the Center of the Earth, but like didn't really enjoy it that much, but at least I can check that classic off. I think this was one that I had on my classics I wanted to read list, so at least it's helpful that way. The next 3-star is like solely just like my personal opinion. I think some people would really like this book. It's Happily Ever After and Everything in Between. This is by Debbie Tung. She writes these really cute graphic novels, comics. I first came across her book Book Love last year, and I loved that one. This one is just about her experience as a newlywed, and I think solely for the fact that I've been married for 14 years, I can't really relate to her newlywed experience, but their comics were cute. If people have been married for shorter amounts of time, I think this would be probably a more enjoyable book for them. Then I have one 3.5-star, and that is the book Spell Maker. So actually I read this entire duology this month. So there's Spell Maker and then Spell Breaker, which I should have looked this up. I think Spell Breaker is only coming out in March sometime. And so the whole concept is that some people in this world have magic. Some people can cast spells, the spell makers, and some people can break spells. I really liked the idea behind it, and I quite enjoyed book 1, and I enjoyed book 2 more, so we'll just kind of like ease into 4 stars here, because I gave book 2 4 stars, and there was quite a bit I liked about book 2. I really enjoyed at the beginning, and I can't say much about it because, you know, book 2. But then it kind of like went downhill a bit. But we do follow a woman who is a spell breaker, but she's never been registered, and so she has to do it in secret, and then she kind of gets caught and has to help this person out. And I thought it was a really cool concept. I liked the idea behind it, but there was a few things. In book 2, we had more like Christian themes kind of come out. I talked about this a bit in one of my reading vlogs. But then there's also parts where it was like, I'm not 100% sure if this character is praying right now or actually swearing. And I feel like if you're like, you gotta pick one, right? And if this is like written by a Christian, which I'm not 100% sure if it is, then why is it like possibly this person is taking the Lord's name in vain? So that part was unfortunate, but I liked the idea behind the books. Then I read the book, actually I listened to it. It's called The Barren Grounds. I originally came across this because I was looking for new releases in the like middle grade section, and this one really caught my attention because it has Indigenous characters, and it's set in Canada. So like this is perfect for me. And I only realized when I was listening to it that these two main characters are foster siblings, which just totally fits with our family. So I was really excited about that. So we kind of follow these two main characters who, yeah, they're foster siblings, kind of, you know, having some issues with that. But then they kind of get like sucked into a fantasy world, and the fantasy world has to do with like the indigenous culture and stories. And I thought it was really cool, really well done. And it seems like this is going to be a series, so I would like to continue on with the series. I read another classic this month, and that was The Yellow Wallpaper. So this book has a bunch of stories, but The Yellow Wallpaper is in here. And really it's just, I think, is it like 50-ish pages long or something? And it's just a woman's, I think it's based on her true story about, it's about depression. And in the story, this woman is trapped in a room and there's yellow wallpaper, and she pretty much like goes from mildly depressed to like way more depressed because she's not allowed to do anything. She's not allowed to read, write. She does some writing, but it's in secret. And as someone who lives in a place where it's very cold during the winter and knows about winter blues, and not necessarily depression itself, but like, you know, like at least a mild form, I know that focusing on yourself, like sitting in a room and not doing anything, is going to make it worse. Like focusing on others and being creative makes it so much better. Like for me, having this channel the last 2 winters has made my winters so much easier. And yeah, so I thought this was really well done. And apparently this story, when it came out, whatever year it was written, actually helped to change how doctors, you know, the environments that they put people in that were depressed. And so instead of putting them in a room and not letting them do anything, they actually like gave them things to do and put them in more cheerful rooms. Another middle grade one that I enjoyed was the series is called Greystone Secrets, and this book was called The Strangers. So it starts out with our 3 siblings. Let's see if I can remember their names. Chess, Emma, and Finn. They get home from school one day and the news is on, and they hear that 3 kids have been kidnapped, and they have the exact same names and birth dates as these kids and look quite similar. And then their mom disappears the next day, and so they're like determined to figure out like what's going on here and what happened with her. And yeah, I really enjoyed book 1. I listened to it on audio, and I have book 2 out, and I would like to read it for middle grade March, but we'll see if I can get to it. But this series so far, the start of it was a lot of fun. Then for my Patreon buddy read for February, we read Iscariot by Tosca Lee, and you guys, I like tabbed so many pages. So she like uses, you know, like historical information and obviously takes a creative license and writes down what was possibly Iscariot's life, like Judas Iscariot. And it's interesting because she started right when he was a young boy, using events that happened in history, and I had never thought about Judas as someone young. And yeah, this book, whether or not it's accurate in any way, because obviously like there's not a whole lot in the Bible about Judas, it definitely opened my eyes to some of the history that was happening around that time. And it made me think a lot about, you know, Judas, and like how in so many ways like that could be any one of us. And yeah, I don't know, I appreciated how much this book made me think. Another book I read for the Hey Reader-a-thon is On the Horizon. This is just a middle grade book that is poems about, of course I turned to the one page where there was no poems, World War II. So it's broken down into I think 3 or 4 parts. The first part is like Pearl Harbor, and then there's Japan, and I don't remember the rest, but yeah, I read this in like 45 minutes. I was impressed with the direction that she went with these poems. She pulled in real people's stories, and yeah, I would recommend this if you are doing any kind of like World War II stuff with middle grade kids or are interested yourself. Then my daughter has been wanting me to read this book for so long. Esperanza Rising. I finally listened to this on audio. The audio was really good because there's so many Spanish words, and I don't know how to speak Spanish as much as I would like to, and it was nice to be able to hear the words. But this is about a girl who is fairly wealthy in Mexico, and then circumstances happen and her mom have to flee to California and become poor. And I liked the book. There's obviously supposed to be character growth. Our character is very self-centered at the beginning, and doesn't realize like she's actually one of these poor people that she's kind of like making fun of. And I appreciate the character growth, but she's traveling with her mom, and I feel like as a parent, her mom should have like warned her, like, you know, like maybe informed her of a few things before this trip happened that would make the character growth in the book a lot less interesting. But as a parent, I feel like she was kind of slacking on her job a little bit there. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a good look at the camps that they had. What are they, like the work camps in California? And what year is this set in? 1924. Yeah, so I enjoyed this book, and my daughter's glad that I finally read it. And then my last 4-star is Just Like That. Gary D. Schmidt is one of my favorite middle grade authors. I feel like his books are upper middle grade, like lower YA kind of. So Just Like That is the 3rd book in a companion series, so none of the books have to be read in order. First there was The Wednesday Wars, then Okay for Now, and then Just Like That. So in book 1, we're following a character named Halling Hood, and in book 3, we're following a girl that he went on a date with and was good friends with, and she is mourning Halling's death. So that he dies before the book even happens. But I had a hard time getting into this book, and I think part of the reason was I was mourning Halling's death, because he comes also, I think, in book 2. I've only read that one like once, I think. But I was just like, oh, how can that character be dead? So this book takes place with her like mourning his death, and then she goes to a boarding school. So there's a little bit of like the whole girls' school, Mean Girls. I don't like that whole boarding school, Mean Girls plot line, but it wasn't the main focus here, so I appreciated that. And then there is also another main character that's going through some struggles. There's a boy that kind of lives around the area. Yeah, and I was reminded how much like Gary D. Schmidt, he can just like weave a story so well. I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it did take me a bit to get into it, possibly too because it's been so long since I read the first 2. He's good at like kind of breaking me and like just weaving, I don't know, all these different details into stories. And then I have one single 4.5 star, and that is A Cry from the Dust. There's so many things I liked about this book, but I can't say what they were because it would spoil the book. But our main character is a forensic artist, and she is putting together, what is it, like a display about the 1857 Mountain Meadows Massacre that happened in Utah. And there are people in her day that don't want this kind of to happen. They don't want this story to be told. So murders are happening, and there were some twists in here that were like, oh, a twist that I've always wanted to happen in a book happened in here that I can't tell you what it is. The only reason this book is not getting 5 stars for me is because I didn't really like our main character, and that is important to me. But obviously the plot and stuff like was good enough that this got a 4.5 star. If she could have just been a little bit less annoying character, I would have liked it more. But this has made me really excited to read more Carrie Stewart Parks books. Then I hit the jackpot with like 5-star books. I have 3 Christian fiction books and then 1 middle grade book here. So I got quite a few from NetGalley this month because I was looking for ebooks. I was like, well, maybe I'll look on there. So the first one I read was The Well-Watered Woman. And I'm gonna have to put the dates below because I totally don't remember when they're all being released. But this one was all about like getting back into God's Word, and this book really inspired me. I enjoyed the writing and just like the challenge and the stories behind it, and I would highly recommend that one. Then I read 10 Words to Live By Jen Wilkin, and this was on my anticipated reads for the year. So I was really excited that I got to read this one ahead of time, and she just goes through the 10 Commandments and talks about like what that means now. And I was like screenshotting my phone and like kind of like highlighting things, and I was like, I need to buy the actual book so I can just like highlight it. This would be a really good one to go through with a group of women. I think I might recommend that to my little small group. And then my third Christian nonfiction book was Woven by Angie Smith, and I think I'm going to put out a disclaimer because I don't think this book is going to be for everyone, because she has a sarcastic sense of humor that I know a lot of people don't like, but I really like that. So this book, she goes through just the entire Bible and links things together. Like, she shows you how the threads are woven together. She did it in the title there. I think the target audience for this book is actually like new Christians. But as someone that's been a Christian for a long time and, you know, read through the Bible, there was still tons of things that I learned from it and little connections that I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that that was a thing. And then with her humor, I think sometimes, especially if you've grown up like in a Christian environment, you forget how weird some of these like stories are that take place in the Bible. And she does a really good job at like pointing these out and being like this isn't normal, and like here is why this is countercultural for that time. And I don't know, I feel like she just did a really good job of explaining the Bible in our terms, and I really appreciated that. Like I wouldn't replace this as reading the Bible, but I think it was a good way to see things that might be missed otherwise. And then my last 5-star book is one that I did a reading vlog on, and that is Forever or a Long, Long Time. So if you watch that, then you already know, but this is about sibling set that have been adopted out of foster care. I think at the point the book starts, they've been adopted for 2 years. And this book just like really focuses on the trauma that they went through, and even though they're in a great home now, just like the trauma that they're still dealing with. And as someone that is a foster parent, this just like really hit home. It did a good job of being like there's no quick fixes. And in this book, the siblings have to kind of go back and figure out where this trauma started. And yeah, I feel like the author did such a good job, because so often it's just like, you know, you just need to say the right words and then bam, everyone's healed kind of thing in books. But it's not like that. So I really appreciated the look at foster care and adoption, and would recommend this if you're at all interested in those topics. Okay, so I don't think I missed any books, but that is what I read in February. Which, considering we, you know, added another kid into the house and she's little and making me not sleep, I feel like that's pretty decent. So right now I'm finishing up the Hey Reader-a-thon, which should be ending as this video goes live. And then I'm so excited for March Mystery Madness and Middle Grade March, and I'm hoping to read a ton. Let me know what were some of your 5-star books from February, and thanks again for watching, guys.